It's a little more played than Tom Ross's Bant Heroic strategy, but we typically see White-Blue Heroic underneath the camera. Mathews on a mulligan to 5 here against Boswell as we are underway here in Game 1 of round number 4.
From the decks in Syracuse the week before the Pro Tour, it felt like Tom's build of Heroic was the big breakout deck. He was playing green in the deck essentially just for Dramoka's command, and that card was incredibly impressive. Jeskai Heroic, a deck that in open series terms was put on the radar mostly by Joe Lissette.
Yes. And Joe Lissette does have a standard open win with that deck as well. At our standard open at the Season 1 Invitational, as Boswell is not wasting any time trying to get this game over with. A turn 2 Rashasha Death Dealer, a turn 3 Burmaz King of Oreskos, as Mathews is on just a Plains on his side of the table. And the one thing about this Abzan Aggro deck, too, is that it closes out the game pretty quick.
Yep. Another thing, as Boswell's start here indicates, the mana's a bit sketchy.
A touch.
Death Dealer into Burmaz is ambitious.
You're running pretty good if you're able to do that. And with no Manic influence as well.
Yeah, just 2 basics and a temple. Perfect. That's just how you draw it up.
But if the mana works for this deck, it's a very potent deck.
And the mana working isn't just about do you have your appropriate distribution of colored mana, though that's the big thing. It's also, do you have lands that allow you to play your spells on time? At the end of the day, you're an aggro deck. You can only afford so many lands that come into play tapped. So there are basics in the list that could otherwise be temples, for example, but Boswell also needs to play his cards on time, so you have to have the right mix of mana fixing, but lands that come into play untapped.
Here, Heroes was the play there for Mathews. This is a Thoughtseize from Boswell. You have to imagine he knows what he's up against, but he does want to get some information here. 2 copies of Ordeal of Thassa, a Teamer Battle Rage, another copy of Hero of Irosh among the options here for Andrew to pick from. So we'll see what the boss does select. You see he is number 11 on our Season 2 leaderboard, so he does have 2 buys right now. Thoughtseize will select Hero of Irosh. The follow-up play is a copy of Ultimate Price.
2 in the main deck for Boswell this weekend.
Now there's a Warden of the first tree. The attack, the trigger. There'll be a cat token coming.
This is about how you draw it up if you're Boswell here. Great clock backed up by some disruption here, a discard spell, a removal spell.
You can't be unhappy. That's for sure. It's everything he's asking for.
And Boswell is a player that we've seen do work with Warden of the first tree and really haven't seen anywhere else. But it feels like it's a card that comes up often for Boswell and is excellent. Not that game, because Paul just has nothing to do after his creature dies and the other one is hit by a discard spell. But
Andrew Boswell going to win game number 1 here over Paul Mathews. Abzan Aggro very quickly up a game over Jeskai Heroic. So we take a look at the Jeskai Heroic sideboard. There are 2 Ordeal of Heliod's, a Valorous Stance, a Seeker of the Way, 2 Cloud Form, 2 Treasure Cruise, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 3 Stubborn Isles, and then 2 copies of Seismic Rupture, the new Pyroclasm.
So there's not a lot of great options here. I think the Valorous Stance definitely comes in. It can protect creatures on Paul's side and also kill some of Andrew's, so that seems excellent. But unlike Abzan mid-range and Abzan can control, Disdainful Stroke does not have a lot of targets in Boswell's deck. There are Siege Rhinos, but the rest of his deck's pretty low to the ground. I think the Stubborn Denials are okay. I think they can come in most Heroes Downfall style matchups, but they are not perfect here against Boswell because a lot of his draws are just going to be a curve of creatures.
What is he on Boswell's side?
A Thoughtseize, 2 copies of Duress, 2 copies of Hunt the Hunter, 3 Valorous Stance, 3 Drowned Sorrows, a Sorum Solemn Visitor, 2 copies of Nissa Worldwaker, and an Ajani Mentor of Heroes. I think the discard spells here are pretty good at breaking up the curve or taking Paul's critical piece. The Thoughtseize, the 2 copies of Duress, and the 3 copies of Valorous Stance can also handle something that gets out of control. They're very good when backed up by discard spells as well because you can use a Duress or Thoughtseize to strip a God's Willing, then your Valorous Stance kills their big thing, and then life is pretty good.
Well, these players will sideboard and shuffle up here for game number 2. We will talk about the Star City Games Winter Collection. We're almost out of winter, which means the chance to pick this up almost over.
Yeah, this is a culmination of a lot of the pins and sleeves that we've made. You see the Mammoth, the Rat, the Wolf, and the Turtle Witness. This is all available on card sleeves, play mats, and dice bags. You can head over to StarCityGames.com/creature collection to order your items today, or just head over to the dealer booth at any Star City Games Open or any Grand Prix that we're vending.
Spring collection on the way. You have to imagine that will include some of our fun things from SCG Game Night, including the old cat on our lapels here this weekend.
So far, for my money, the best token.
Certainly the most well received. Not close. So certainly the most well received. I don't even think it's close.
A lot of posts on my Facebook crawl.
You know what's not going to sell well? The bee. Should have been consulted about that.
So frightening.
Should have been consulted about the bee before doing that, I think. It's just a risky idea.
It's a spring creature.
It is.
And there are some hornets floating around in standard between the nest and the queen.
Yep.
Seems like a fine time to do it.
There are people who are scared of bees.
That's true.
I suppose there are people who are scared of cats, too.
Yeah, there's a lot of phobias out there, man. You'd be surprised.
I'm turning I'm becoming a cat guy. I used to hate cats like my entire life, so I'm allergic to them. But you know, they're actually pretty cool.
They're pretty great.
Yeah, they're pretty cool. I wish I could have a pet. I think it's just irresponsible because of how much I travel.
Yeah, with our travel schedule, you know, I think it's not fair. A dog is definitely off the table, and I think even a cat would be unfair.
I'm turning towards plants.
That's not really a companion in the same way that
No, it's really not. It's really not.
It's just a thing that lives in your space, which is fine.
Yeah, water it.
It's just not the same.
It's not. But I've considered it.
It is a good litmus test for if your travel schedule just takes having a pet off the table, because if your plant dies, it means you can't have an animal.
Absolutely not. So that's part of the reason I've gone this route.
Yeah, it's helpful.
My friends are trying to get me to get a fern. I don't think that's a good plant, though.
I'm not really that knowledgeable about them because I would just never go out of my way to purchase a plant. But
this is the test right now. If I can take care of a plant.
Right, then maybe you can talk about having a cat.
Yes.
Actually, I think the hierarchy goes plant to fish to actual pet.
Okay, all right. I think a caterpillar probably fits in there somewhere.
I think those things just die too fast.
Yeah?
There's shelf life for them in the wild. It's just not, you know. It's hard to know whether or not it died due to your own negligence or because that's just what happens.
Let's see, that's something we should have on tokens. Caterpillar.
Oh, I'm sure that'll come down the pipeline.
The next month, butterfly.
Perfect.
We're basically rich already.
Combo. That feels like another thing that should be saved for a spring collection, so maybe 2016.
I'm going to have to get some trademark on that idea.
Yeah, you also should have just kept your mouth shut about that because that idea is so good.
Yep.
And now
it's out there.
It away.
It's out there, and they can
just
take it. I can't do anything about it. Lesson learned.
Yeah, no. Sometimes I know the momentum of the idea just comes out, and you can't help it. But it's not great.
See, Paul Mathews can actually put a real draw together here in this game.
That was almost a real draw. If he hits his second land on turn 2, he's got a little something going.
Probably have a bit of a game then.
Fell behind, and then the ultimate price was too much to overcome.
Mathews is going to take a look at his hand. He'll be on the play here, of course. Looks like he is happy. Boswell is too. Game number 2 underway. Temple of Triumph is how things will start. Top card stays on top. We head back Boswell's way. Boswell will take a draw. Windswept Heath is his first draw of the game. And it looks like he's going to start with a Land of War Waste into a Warden of the First Tree. Down to 19 goes the Boz. We head back Mathews' way. Island the draw here for Paul. He'll play that island. There's a Hero of Iroas. Boswell will take a draw step. Jermoka's Command.
Very important card for Boswell in this matchup. The fight clause is very nice, and making Paul sacrifice an enchantment at various points may be good.
It can be good.
Not good against the ordeals.
Correct.
Potentially good against other enchantments.
As if you sacrifice the ordeal to Jermoka's Command, you still do get the trigger.
Now, it's still pretty solid against Ordeal of Heliod because Boswell may not care about Paul getting 10 life if he's blowing up a creature. But against Ordeal of Heliod, Boswell has to be a lot more careful.
Boswell going to sacrifice the Windswept Heath, go get himself a Plains. We'll see what the follow-up play will be, assuming that there is one. It's a Fleecemane Lion. It's a passing of the turn back to Paul Mathews. Mathews will untap those 2 lands and take a draw here. Picked up a copy of Favorite Hoplite.
So Andrew with 3 copies of Drowned in Sorrow on his sideboard. I believe he has brought them in. It's a card that I've actually over time become less and less a fan of this card against heroic strategies when you're on the draw, because it's easy for it to get outpaced. That said, if Paul's jammed up a little bit here and he's going to be curving out with creatures, Drown could potentially be very good for Boswell.
Here if Iroas a 2-2, attacking the Fleecemane line a 3-3. See if Boswell has any interest in blocking here.
Well, Defiant Strike is still a trade.
Yep.
Not the end of the world. And Boswell also might be happy trading this Fleecemane line for a God's Willing.
It's got some thinking to do. You can see Boswell's hand, Dromoka's Command, another copy of Warren of the First Tree, a Thoughtseize, a couple of lands over there as well. And he will block.
Excuse me, Thoughtseize in hand, not Drowning Sorrow.
Sure. Here's Center Soul. This will trigger Heroic, of course. It'll also give Paul protection from green or white, whatever he decides. And he'll also get the rebound trigger next turn, so.
And Center Soul is a very nice card against decks that are intending to block a good percentage of the time, because it means that the rebound is productive. You can use it to trigger Heroic again, and then potentially prevent Boswell from blocking with something large.
Hero's Downfall, a timely draw there for Boswell, assuming that he can cast the card. We'll take a look here. It's going to be a Duress, actually.
A Duress.
Treasure Cruise, Defiant Strike, a couple favorite hoplites over there.
Is ready to start. Please come to the J spanner to the right of the stage. If you're in draft number 4.
Big fan of that new Duress artwork, actually.
I'm still a Saga man myself.
I know you're old
The
school.
classics.
That dragon's just really mad at Zergo. Probably from ringing that bell too much.
Although Duress typically not very good against the decks where Zergo would be present.
It's true. There's a Temple, top card. Quickly becomes the bottom card. Boswell across here for 1. And we will head back Mathews' way. The rebound on Center Soul. That will occur. So that is done resolving. Take a draw. Looks like Seeker of the Way was the pickup. Here's an attack for 4. Pro White was the name off of Center Soul, so nothing like a Ordeal of Heliod can be cast there. Important to note. A Seeker and a passing of turn. Duress the draw here for Boswell.
No rush for him to cast that Duress. Last spell in Paul's hand is Treasure Cruise, and that's pretty far away from having to be worried about.
Attention, two-headed giant players. Meet your judge.
This is one of the games where
Over by
the mana is not cooperating with Boswell all that effectively. You know, he's had some pretty inefficient turns here so far. Last one, and I think this one is also shaping up to be a little on the slow side.
Bos gonna attack here. Mathews predictably not going to block. Looks like Bos will have to take a point of damage to cast a Hero's Downfall. The follow-up is a Temple. Take a look at that top card. Boswell going to consult his hand. What he's going to have to try to do here is somehow set up a solid Dromoka's Command. You have to imagine that's what he's trying to work towards.
Well, with Warden, he's going to be able to naturally make a creature larger than what Paul's bringing to the table. And then the fight power can be very potent if Paul makes some sort of move with a heroic trigger. So it should be good for Boswell this game.
Should be. The mana's lining up appropriately now. We're getting to that point. So now we head back Paul's way. Treasure Cruiser card over there. 2 favorite hoplites as well. But this is another game where Mathews is having some mana issues. Going to start by attacking just for 2. Follow up with a favorite hoplite and just pass the turn back. A single blue mana from the heroic deck doesn't really represent very much.
It's rare. I mean, Stubborn Denial is maybe on Boswell's radar here, but Andrew always has the option of just using that other Duress in his hand to see what's up before making any sort of move.
See Boswell perhaps taking a look to see how many cards Paul has in his graveyard for a card like Treasure Cruise. The answer is 3 currently. Could be 4 thanks to this duress. 2 treasure cruises in hand along with the favorite hoplite. And it looks like a copy of God's Willing.
So can't cut him off from Treasure Cruise. So, and God's Willing is probably the best card in the hand anyway.
Yeah. Mathews' hand pretty lacking. It's a really weird combination of cards.
Yeah. And I'm not a huge fan of bringing in Treasure Cruise in this kind of matchup because Boswell is still, at the end of the day, an aggressive deck. I think having 1 in the deck is fine. I'm questionable of having the second copy.
You can see the second copy right now is pretty poor.
And it's not even clear how good the first one's going to be because Paul committing an entire turn to it is problematic right now. If he even gets to, which right now he can't.
Boswell going to sacrifice that Windswept Heath.
So this is a pretty potent line that Boswell has access to. He can just sit behind this Warden, which Paul can't currently attack through. If Paul draws something that allows him to make an attack, then the Dromoka's command potentially becomes a huge blowout. And Paul's deck is not very good at killing creatures, so Boswell may be able to just go all the way to the top with this Warden, as we've seen him do several times in the past.
Wouldn't be his first time doing it, that's for sure. There's the attack. There's a block.
Well, I think Boswell was probably planning on just playing the other Warden after the fact, but now this is a great spot to just...
Yeah, this is great for him.
Go ahead and do this instead.
Here's Dromoka's command as well.
Now, I think that I would prefer to hold off for a turn here on the Dromoka's command if I'm Boswell, because now this puts a 6th card in the graveyard for Paul and he can just Treasure Cruise.
Okay.
That said, this is still a very good turn for Boswell, but I think I would have taken 1 more hit there. If Paul draws a spell, then Dromoka's command and response and blow him out, but I don't think I'm a huge fan of allowing Paul to Treasure Cruise basically for free this turn.
Really curious block there by Paul with the favorite hoplite.
Yeah, that felt. I think that Paul was just gunning for Treasure Cruise anyway. Like he feels like he needs to just gas up, and he was willing to chump block here to get one of these Treasure Cruises online. Because otherwise, his hand's nothing.
Yeah.
You know, he can't cast the Treasure Cruises. So I don't know if I necessarily like the play either, but I at least understand the logic.
Treasure Cruise does allow Mathews to gas back up as we head back Boswell's way. The counter on the Warden is from the Dromoka's command. The die above the Warden is that it is level 1. Here's a Thoughtseize. We know about that other Treasure Cruise. 2 in hand yet again, so he's bored in quite a few of those.
Yep. And I like Boswell Hill here stripping the 1 threat, leaving Paul with a hand that can't really do anything. Andrew can now take this opportunity to go to level 2 with the Warden. And then an untapped land might be too much for Paul to overcome unless he finds Valorous Stance pronto.
Yep. Level 2 is where we're going. Here come the beatdowns. And Boswell going to be gaining some life. Ordeal of Thassa the draw. This was the danger, of course. Mathews probably has to cycle that Defiant Strike right now.
Yeah, he's got to find something to do. Especially with the Treasure Cruises in hand. He's just got to cast something.
There's Defiant Strike over there. Take a draw. It's got to be a creature. It doesn't look to be. It's just another copy of Flooded Strand. Mathews will just pass the turn back. Boswell will untap with his level 2 Warden. And there's that untapped land he were talking about. And he might just go to the top rope.
Yeah, it just depends how much he cares about Valorous Stance in this spot. I feel because Paul's got nothing going on, Boswell can probably just risk it because if he gets hit by Valorous Stance, it's not the end of the world. His other line of play here could have been just cast the Warden, pump that one up, and hit you with 3/3s. But I like taking the risk here because it's a very low chance that Paul has it, and even if he does, it's not the end of the world.
And also, he has a backup Warden if in case anything goes really bad.
Exactly, that's why it's not a huge risk because, you know, Paul would basically have to untap and follow up with a creature to really punish Andrew, even if he drew Valorous Stance, which, you know, for all Andrew knows, isn't even necessarily in his deck.
Yep.
So.
Everything works out here well for Boswell. The Warden is now level 3. A bunch of counters on that thing. Don't forget you could activate Warden's 3rd ability multiple times, as we've seen Boswell do before, and keep putting those counters on there.
Yeah, it caught me off guard the first time because the parallels to this card and Figure of Destiny are pretty obvious.
Yeah.
But you can just keep going.
And why not?
And it has trample, so that's a combo.
It is, yes. The old trample lifelink beatdowns. Flooded Strand is the land here for Mathews. He's going to need a card like Valorous Stance right now. He does have one in his main deck, has another one in his sideboard. Going to sacrifice that Flooded Strand. So he has the ability to actually draw into it. 5 cards in the graveyard right now. Treasure Cruise will cost 3 actual mana plus the Delve of 5. That makes the total 8. And could work his way into a Valorous Stance to get that off the table. But if not, I think this one's over.
Yep. I mean, there's certainly no blocking to be done at this point.
That's
It's just too
for
large and it tramples.
That's for sure. And Paul wants to change the way he's going to tap his mana here a little bit. There's Treasure Cruise. 1 and 2 and 3. I don't think I see a Valorous Stance. No, I'm sure I don't. Laguna Band Trailblazer does have a lot of toughness, but
A little small for this party.
that's true. Boswell draws. In we go. There's a block. And right now it's good enough. He doesn't have to activate yet again. I think Mathews knows that he will concede the game. Andrew Boswell going to win this game and match over Paul Mathews. 2-0. Obs on aggro will take care of Jeskai Heroic, and Boswell moves on to 4-0.
I think that Paul there in the post-board games had a slightly too slow build of the deck for the matchup. And Warden of the First Tree, again, it feels like no one really plays it but Boswell, and when we have him on camera, it's often very good. And it was great in that game as well.
Yeah, somehow Warden of the First Tree for Bos is always really good. It always makes me wonder why people aren't playing more of
We
it.
see no copies in other people's lists, or maybe sometimes we see one.